We had talked about self-pollination and cross-pollination, otherwise known as xenogamy or allogamy, and we had seen that cross-pollination had a few more advantages as compared to those of self-pollination. It was a better option, better suited option if the plant was seeking genetic variability. So, the plant in itself has developed certain mechanisms, or you see various methods in which there is a complete possibility that self-fertilization or self-pollination is being avoided, and instead the plant prefers cross-pollination. So, the next topic we have, that what are the different contrivances which ensure that cross-pollination takes place within the plant, inside the flower. So, the first one is the condition where the plant shows dichogamy, or we say that the plant is showing unisexual flowers. That is, within the plant you are going to find either the flower will have the male part or either the flower is going to have female part. Both androecium and gynoecium would not be present within the same flower. I repeat, we are not considering the entire plant, we are considering a single flower. The plant may have many flowers on it, but within a flower either it would be a male flower or it would be a female flower, which means that either it would have an androecium or gynoecium respectively in the case that I have talked about. So, we have the example of unisexuality. For example, we have maize where the plant is monoecious. That means male and female flowers would be found on the same plant, but the single flower would either be male or female. The other example is papaya or mulberry. Both of these are dioecious. That means one plant would be giving rise to completely female flowers, other plant would be giving rise to completely male flowers. We talked about these terms. So, these are the examples where the plant prefers to make sure that cross pollination takes place. So, it has given rise to unisexual flowers. The other example is dichogamy. Now, what is dichogamy? It has something to do with fusion. As you can see, gamy is the word that we find in this word. It is of two types. One is proto-andry. Proto means first, andry refers to male, and other one is protogamy. That means in both the cases, in order to ensure that self-pollination does not take place, the plants make sure that within the flower, if it is a bisexual flower, both male and female parts are present. In one case, the plant's male part would mature earlier. That means the maturation stage where the pollens are ready to get dehiscized and they are ready to get pollinated, the pollens would mature first of all. So, we have the case of proto-andry where we have the example of sunflower. Mind it, the plant could be bisexual over here, the flower itself could be bisexual. So, in sunflower, the male part would mature earlier. The other example is salvia. And because the male has matured earlier, the female part has not matured as yet. So, there is no possibility that pollination would take place and result in fertilization. In the case of protogamy, we have the example of Mirabilis jalapa, otherwise known as 4 o'clock plant. I hope you remember this plant from your knowledge of genetic studies where we had talked about incomplete dominance. 4 o'clock plant is showing protogamy where the female part would develop earlier. That means the stigma would receptive for the pollens, but the pollens of the plant would not have developed completely for their dispersal. So, such is the condition of protogamy. Then there is a condition known as prepotency. Prepotency is also something like this, that the male plant or the male flower, if the plant is unisexual or it is bisexual, it would develop earlier. So, both of these, dichogamy and prepotency, show a condition where the male part or the flower or the female part is not receptive for those gametophytes which are coming from the same plant. It is not receptive for that. Okay. Otherwise, prepotency can be understood that supposedly the stigma of the flower is not receptive for the pollens of the same flower. That means it is going to prefer the flower parts, or I'm sorry, the flower stigma of the flower is going to prefer the pollens which have come from other plants instead of the plant within, instead of the flowers within the plant. I would explain it in a way because I'm fumbling a bit. We'll start it all over again. What prepotency is all about. Prepotency, understand it, is a simple condition where supposedly this is the flower 1 of plant and this is flower 2. Now this flower 2 is supposedly the male flower, so the pollens would come and fall over the stigma. Now the stigma over here is not receptive for flower 2 pollens. Why it is not receptive? Not completely non-receptive, but it is less receptive. What it prefers, that from plant 2, instead of the plant itself on which it lies, not this plant, the other plant which has different flower, when it comes over here, it is more receptive for that pollen. So that is prepotency, another contrivance for preventing the cross pollination. Next is self-sterility, that it is completely non-receptive. It is not going to take the pollen. How prepotency is a little bit different from self-sterility? As I told you, the stigma is less receptive. It prefers cross-pollination. It prefers the pollens from different plants as seen in apple and grapes. This is the example of prepotency. But in the case of self-sterility, the flower is not going to take pollens in any case from the same plant flowers. So the example over here is tobacco. Other example is potato, tomato. Such are the examples of self-sterility. Then we have hetero style. Now hetero means different. Here the reference is to style. Now here we have that the height of style varies. That means both the stamen and the style are not at equal heights. Okay? And in such flowers, the pollination would only take place when here lies the stigma and the stamen is at same height. When they are at same height, then only pollination is going to take place. But supposedly heterostyle is there, that means the stamen lies like this. So there is less chance of pollination. The dehiscence pattern would vary in order to bring about such a contrivance where self-fertilization is avoided and cross-pollination takes place. This is heterostyle. And the last one is Hercogami. Hercogami is a condition where we have mechanical barriers. Okay, we find mechanical barriers within the flower in order to avoid self-pollination. Okay, the example is calotropis. Many orchids, you know, orchids are located in bunches, so they prefer this hercogamy. That beautiful shape of orchid petals is the mechanical contrivance that they have adopted in order to avoid cross pollination. Now supposedly you have a petal in between. Supposedly there is a female part, that is the gynoecium, and you have petals in between. So the anther and the female part are not in contact. So that is certainly a mechanical barrier that the plant has provided within its flower in order to avoid cross pollination. So these are the various contrivances which ensure that cross pollination takes place and self pollination is avoided, so that the plant can experience a lot of genetic variability that comes in its stride as a result of cross pollination.